Hey guys, sick today, so thought I'd make a video with a bit of a diagram today instead of a nice walk. So basically, one thing that occurred to me is that, okay, I'm Traditionalist Catholic. A lot of you guys probably do not know what that even means, so I thought I'd give an explanation. So it's actually a much broader term than people realize. So basically, after the Vatican, so there's the Catholic Church. And after Vatican II, there's there was a split in the opinions of what should happen. There are those who were more or less happy with the changes. After the Second Vatican Council, they brought in changes like Mass and English, and certain changes. Some would argue, and this group too has a bunch of subgroups as well, in doctrine, depending or reforms or new understandings of doctrine based on how some of them would look at it. There are some more extreme groups and more moderate groups there as well. And then there are more traditional Catholics who have a more negative view. And and so basically, we would dislike that Mass is in English. We wanted the traditional Latin Mass, and yeah, there are things other than there were changes made to the Mass other than just it's in English now. No, entire prayers were admitted. The orientation, a lot of the symbolism was altered, changed, and rejected. I've heard it said that the Latin, while it's probably the most visible difference to someone who's uneducated, is actually one of the most minor differences in the changes. So, ancient prayers were thrown out. Things that talk about the uniqueness of the Catholic faith, the nature of sin, and on a reliance on God and the centrality of God were removed. So, like for example, one example would be Mass facing the people. That de-emphasizes from for the traditionalist point of view. We would say that de-emphasizes the centrality of God in worship. Um, because the priest, when he prays, is facing the people rather than the tabernacle. And yeah, there are a lot of people here who openly over on this side who literally say that, and they want that a more man-centered church. Some would disagree, but yeah. So anyway, but today we're talking about the difference among traditionalist Catholics. So there are like a few things that make trads. Trads, there's one, the Mass. We dislike or even reject changes to the Mass and other sacraments. Two, and S, that's outside the church, there's no salvation. We do believe that you need to be big C Catholic to go to heaven. A lot of these people here would reject it and say that either generic Christianity is sufficient, or some even has heard say you don't need to believe in Jesus at all. We of course reject that. Jesus is the way, the truth, and life, and by believing Jesus, we got to believe it in His way, is what we would say. So a lot of fundamentalist Baptists say, "Oh, we got to believe in all these doctrines, and Catholics aren't going to heaven." Traditional Catholics I've actually met some of them. I actually get along with them quite well for the most part once we sit down and talk, because we do get the importance of getting doctrine right. We both take it seriously. Clearly, we think each other is wrong, but actually, some of my best friends are like hardline Calvinists who don't think Catholics are saved. Actually, the feeling is mutual, and guess what? We love each other genuinely, and we don't just say that figure of speech. No, we actually get along. Look forward to talking with each other. And of course, there's ecumenism. Forgive me. That's not how it's spelled. Forgive my cursive and just shorthand. By ecumenism, we don't do the ecumenism. We don't do prayer in common with non-Catholics or even non-traditional Catholics in some cases, because some of us think that these people aren't following what the church has taught for 2,000 years. Wait a moment. Doesn't that mean? Hey, doesn't that mean they're outside the church too? Some trads would say this. Some trads would say no, which is going to lead to different groups among trads as well. I'll explain that, which is what this video is about. And of course, there's the notion of religious tolerance and freedom. So this one would probably be one of the most controversial. It does not mean we should take everyone who disagrees with us and put them like camps or or anything like that. I repeat, not. What it means is that we believe in an ideal situation, the state would recognize the church as the one true faith, and would act accordingly and frame laws with the salvation of the human race in mind, recognizing that Jesus Christ and His church is the only way to salvation. So basically, think these social conservatives who wanted to ban the peace sin, for example. You probably know what I mean. We would be very much along those lines, and essentially, and just talking in general terms, would be one example of it. And we probably like say, don't take kids away from Jesus Christ or the Catholic faith if they're already there. That's how most traditional Catholics would frame it. Now, what does this mean? Now that we hold these things, what does that mean? How should we handle these guys? Seems to be the biggest point of view, and what does us still holding these doctrines mean in practice? Seems to be like the dividing point among various traditional Catholics. So there are a number of groups. I recognize. Let me see. Yeah, I think there are about 3 groups of traditional Catholics that 3 to 4 that I would recognize. There's a 4th/5th one that uses that term, but I don't recognize them as tradcasts, and I'll explain why. So start with the ones I do recognize. There's I call them the FSSP crowd, or the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter crowd. Those would be the ones that say, hey, there's just corruption over here, and these new doctrines, that's just corruption. It never actually happened. Vatican II is actually orthodox, and it's perfectly compatible with all the stuff we see here. And it's just moral corruption. We just need to fight within the church, within this group, to bring things back to sanity, basically. Those would be the Fraternity of St. Peter people, is what I would call them. And so they would operate many of these people might even attend modern Catholic churches with the Mass in English, in some cases. Others would not. I know of people who've actively avoided. They try to actively, at least try to keep the craziness. They try to find masses that are more in line with their way of doing things. So more Gregorian chant, more reverence, etc. And that's how they handle. And whenever they could go to an FSSP mass, they'd go. Then you have, this was probably the biggest traditional Catholic organization in the world, is the SSPX, Society of St. Pius X. So this group would say, no, this is a radical departure of Catholic doctrine. We can't judge the Pope and the bishops because, we're not canonical courts, but we need to recognize the situation for what it is, and we need to act accordingly. So they would set up their own bishops, even without consulting these people, because they say, hey, they're clearly not teaching the Catholic faith. They're clearly not teaching the Catholic faith. There are people who are actively trying to stop the true faith that's necessary to salvation from being spread. We need to cut our losses, not cut our losses, but work around these people. We need to operate within that reality, basically. And so they've consecrated a bunch of other. So about in the late 1980s, early 90s, Marcel Lefebvre, the founder of this group, consecrated 4 bishops without papal mandate, on the grounds that hey, they're not teaching things. So they're not teaching what should be taught. So if you're Protestant, this would be in line with, say, let's say you have a Baptist minister who's brought in a bunch of people who in the local congregation, and he's the minister, and he decided he's not going to believe that Jesus is God anymore, and starts teaching that, tries to actively stop people who do believe Jesus is God from telling that to their kids, tries getting them kicked out of the church. What do you do about that? You either try to get them fired, or faith Jesus comes first. You might still be whatever you were before. You might have your own congregation, or you might say, hey, we're the real success of this congregation. We'll go elsewhere. They've stopped. They're not elsewhere. Now we can't judge the pastor. Maybe it's just But there's a mixed group here. But there's still a mixed group over there. People who still believe in Jesus, and people who follow the crazy minister, basically. You might do your own thing just to make sure the gospel is still preached. You don't judge the people who are still going there necessarily, but you urge them to, like, hey, something needs to be done. But in practical terms, that's what you have to do. So that's kind of like, I'm explaining how a Protestant would understand it. There's a lot of nuances I'm skipping over in theology, but that's a basic way of understanding. They would use the term recognize but resist. So a good biblical parallel I found would be like King David with King Saul. David recognized Saul as legitimate king of Israel, which he was, and everything. But like David was survived many murder attempts by King Saul because of his jealousy. And like there were many attempts before those consecrations were made where Lefebvre was flat out told that we're waiting for you to die. There were people from the Vatican who told him that Jesus did not rise from the dead and stuff like that. Like, so yeah, so that would be so like those that would be their parallel. It's like, yeah, the Pope is still the Pope, the bishops are still the bishops, but the faith needs to come first. Jesus Christ needs to come first. We're not trying to overthrow the bishop, we're not trying to overthrow the Pope, but like we need to make sure we can do what we do and like go on with Orthodox Catholic life. Because we can't count on the parishes. And FYI, for the record, a lot of people in this camp here, the Fraternity of St. Peter people who still go to these parishes, will be the first to tell you that, yeah, they're right about this being a problem. Absolutely. Like, most traditional Catholics that I'm aware of have been in this camp at some point or another, from what I find. And it just becomes, they leave because they find it becomes untenable. Like, you have to, like, get permission to not send your kids to Sunday school because the stuff they're teaching there is heresy. I met families like that who aren't even trad Caths. Like, it happens with people in this group who are more conservative and orthodox. That's how bad it can be. So, yeah. So that would be their point of view. They're saying, like, we need to just go on with Catholic life. We'll have our own bishops for now. We won't give them jurisdiction over an area. We can't. But like, make sure we have someone who's there to do like confirmations and things and ordinations, stuff like that. But in fact, even the current, as I make this, the current head of the Society of St. Pius X is not even a bishop; it's a priest. So that's the SSPX group. That's the largest group in the world. Then you have Sidvacantists. So you know how I say these people recognize the Pope still, and they just resist him? Yeah, these people say that we don't even recognize the Pope anymore. Like, they say, like, okay, he's not teaching these things. He's doing a bunch of other things even beyond this that are going against the Catholic faith. Like, I think Pope Francis posted something like that. Jesus had to apologize to his mother for when he went off in the temple. Like, what the fudge? You're saying that Jesus was committed a sin when he was a kid, disobeyed his parents? Like, that. I even know one priest who said, "Oh, Jesus made a mistake when he chose the 12 apostles." What the fudge? All these people would say, "What the fudge?" Here's the thing: they had all admit the problem. These people would say, "We need to stay and fight to bring him back to his senses and like make sure and try to bring him back to sanity. We can't judge him, so we need to stay there, try to bring him back to sanity, and stay in the local parishes so that work within the dioceses so that this doesn't spread further." These would say, like, things are so bad already; it's all the way through. We need to resist. But we need to resist this error as far as we can without like trying to usurp the parish priest's authority or the bishop's authority as far as we can. But we'll just do whatever we need to like make sure we can have like our own communities that are self-sustainable, not dependent upon these crazy people. And while we try to bring them to their senses. Sedevacandus would say, well, if you're not teaching the Catholic faith, if you've openly preached multiple times against it, well, then how are you how are you Catholic? And if you're not a Catholic, how are you even validly the Pope? How are you validly um, the the parish priest or the local bishop? You aren't. You've left the Catholic Church, and you made it manifest that you're not part of the Catholic Church by saying these heretical things, like saying, "Okay, if someone says they don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead, are they a Christian?" If you're a Bible-believing Christian watching this, or a Protestant of some sort, you would probably say, "No, what the fudge? They've already stopped being Christian. How can you be a Christian minister? You don't even believe in Jesus." That's what this group would say. You're not Catholic because you don't believe the Catholic faith, therefore you're not the valid Pope, etc. And currently, Sid vacant means Latin for like empty chair. We would say the chair of Peter, the successor. There is currently no successor of Peter, is what they would say. They would say there is no Pope, that the bishops pretty well do not have jurisdiction anymore. Not that anymore. Now, that the current bishops do not have jurisdiction because they don't hold the Catholic faith, is what they would all say. Now, that's the what. Now, there is back and forth as to various points on this. Like, they would say, okay, these are the ones with the diocese, remember? Well, the Bible says, like, the judgment, lest you be judged, there's lots of canonical legal requirements about removing heretical priests, bishops that have just simply not happened. That's true. It's not our place to say that we can either just recognize and resist. We're just private individuals. We can do that. And certainly no ability to declare that, hey, this guy's not the Pope, this guy's not that. We need to, like, still stick with the church. This is where God's trying to work, is what they would say. So, like, if you've ever been a Christian or a bad church, I'm saying this especially with Protestant viewers, this would be like your camp, basically. Sedevacantists would say, well, no, that's ridiculous. At a certain point, it becomes illogical. How far do you take it logically? Does the priest literally have to start worshiping the devil publicly in church before you say, okay, this is just too much, I'm walking out? Do you obey to the point where you pray to the devil? And they'd also make points about saying, like, you can't just disobey a bishop. And both groups would criticize this point, a matter of obedience, and saying that you can recognize but resist the Pope. But both this group and this group would criticize the SSPX for that position, based on the Bible, with King David and King Saul. And I am aware of, like, in the case especially of St. Maximus the Confessor and others, there is percent of recognizing authority but resisting them. And they all have different theories about, like, what's going on up here. Like, this group up here would say, oh, they would all have different theories, but, like, say, oh, maybe the Pope is just ignorant. Maybe the Vatican II is not being taught. Maybe it was an illegitimate council, but, like, SSPX or seats think, but, like, we need to still obey. And yeah, but, like, and also these groups are different subgroups as well. So for example, there's the resistance, as they are known. I met priests in here. They're like super hardliners who broke away from SSPX because, like, this SSPX is willing to negotiate with the Vatican about maybe reconciling at some point, and that's their way of trying to, like, bring them back to their senses. They say no, they're not ready, and we think you're being too close friendly with them, so we're going to go off. In some cases, they even get expelled and they organize themselves. I'm not a big fan of resistance myself because, like, I don't mind people believing conspiracy theories, but they literally take it to the point of, like, thinking conspiracy theories, like, global. These people think a lot of these people. I met some of the SSPX resistance crowd people and priests, and they think that, like, if you get vaccinated, it's against the faith completely. And when I say against the faith, I mean, like, it is a matter of faith and revealed truth that global warming is a myth, and that the vaccine is the mark of the beast. And if you disagree, you're not welcome at the church or the sacraments. And, like, they're that level. And for that reason, I personally do not recognize these people. I had some things with them of dealings in the past, and I would at least recognize them. Because aside from that, between this group and this group, it's virtually negligible. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm saying this from a layman's perspective, so all due respect to both Resistance Crowd and SSPX, but I've not been able to, aside from the conspiracy theories that these guys hold, I've not been able to see a valid theological difference. They both hold to recognize and resist position between them, except this guy seemed to be a little more strict and hardline about saying no. But because they try to take like conspiracy theories and say like, oh, if you get vaccinated against the flu or something like that, and you've taken the mark of the beast, therefore you're not welcome at mass anymore. And anyone who believes this, like if you thought COVID was real, they would say you're not welcome at mass. Yeah, like these people. I think these people are personally think these people are insane, and they're going down the rabbit hole. They did have certainly in the beginning have some very good points worth thinking about. Like, okay, I definitely think that reconciling with these people, as depicted in these people, if I may reveal some of my own opinions, is a bad idea. um, Instead of it, kind of just also have some other groups, or different groups, based on. I have a case I haven't figured out. These groups split up on how to deal with these people and each other, basically. So there's some civicantists who are like the SSP Society of St. Pius V. They're a little more open to the idea of like non-civicantists being authentic Catholics. It's probably true, but like from what I can gather, then there's a CMRI that says no, you have to be civicantist to be a Catholic. To be fair to them, like in case you're wondering, I gravitate towards this end of the spectrum myself, though I recognize all three. There's also validity of sacraments because like these people get ordained by these people's lineages of priests and bishops, which these people definitely don't recognize. And so there's this whole debate there. Should you receive sacraments for them? And then there's the Congregation of Mary the Immaculate Queen, that's civicantist, and then you get even more interesting groups. I want to say extreme, but like, okay, I'll get see what I mean. So there's the conclavists. They literally try to elect their own popes. I actually spoke with one of their group's claimants to the papacy, actually named Pope Michael, before he passed away. He was actually quite sensible when we spoke with him. He was actually quite sensible, like not into conspiracy theories. He said, okay, you can believe it, but guess what? That's not part of the Catholic faith. We don't have, no one has, even the Pope doesn't have jurisdiction when it comes to adding things to the faith. So, yeah, there's conclavists who everyone else here would think of as being kind of schismatic. I would actually recognize them because they legitimately think there's an error here. I think they're mistaken by an error of fact. I think it's ridiculous myself, but I am willing to recognize them personally as authentic traditional Catholics. Over here, I'm not willing to recognize like people who believe in women priests or who deny these doctrines, because these have been infallibly defined, taught for 2,000 years, and I don't get to change what the requirements of the faith are. I'm sorry, I love you, but no. That would be, and then you also get like a group that's like half. It's debatable whether it leans more towards this or this. It's called Sid Provisionism. I'll put SP, Sid Provisionism. It's kind of like a mix between these two schools in a way. So they would say that the Pope is a valid Pope, but he's materially, he has authentic jurisdiction over the material aspects of the church, but he doesn't have that spiritual authority because he's a heretic. That's kind of like, it's an interesting school. I've fooled around to myself with a compromise position. My take is currently is that you either are the Pope or you're not. But yeah, but I still would recognize them myself as being Catholic faithful tradition, because like all the debates among traditional Catholics are very, if they sound nuanced, that's because they are. And which is kind of why I recognize them all, because like you've got a bunch of laymen and average priests trying to deal with situations that would have boggled the mind of doctors of the church. And that's why I'm more understanding. These people not so much, because these things are obviously been taught by the church for 2,000 years. If you know anything about church history at all, if you bother to do your daily diligence, you will know about this stuff. Or at least you should. So, sorry, you're teaching a different faith. And all these things, schools, from what I understand, have at some point do have a doctor of the church or a saint who held their position in the past when people did like mental exercises about what would you do if something like this happened. Yeah, and there's a lot of debate about how this, even among them, this group, there's debate about, okay, how to deal with the Pope as heresy. Can he is deposable? Is he actually secretly Orthodox, just misunderstood? And it varies. Also, I'll say this: see how these neat little schools and camps go. A lot of the priests in each of these camps would like to say that, yeah, these are strictly followed by everyone. Yeah, in practice, like, I've seen people go all over the place for the sacraments of Mass. Like, the Fraternity of St. Peter is really wary of Sedevacantist. Sedevacantist are really worried of Fraternity of St. Peter. But even there, I've seen people go back and forth among them. And on my SSPX mission that I attend, I met people of all brands. And it's a small mission. I've studied pretty well every brand, just about every brand recognized. And if there's another brand, it wouldn't shock me. So then there's the 4th/5th group. This is like the 4/3/4. Then there's what I call the liturgic. I call them the liturgical trads. Yeah, notice I put them on this side of the line. These people might have conservative tendencies. They may just make like Latin, smells and bells, and Fraternity of St. Peter, and they will sometimes attend SSPX in some cases I've seen, and Fraternity of St. Peter not sees pretty well. They're all about the smells and bells and liturgy. I personally don't recognize them. Now, in Fraternity of St. Peter, this is one of the reasons I don't attend Fraternity of St. Peter. This group wants these people to be these people, basically. And to cut them off here. That's my big problem with why I don't go to Fraternity of St. Peter Masses, because in practice, I found that... And by the way, this is one of the reasons why I left that movement, is because I found in practice a lot of it was actually... You get to do some conservatives, but it's dominated by people like this, who just want the smells and bells, don't want to talk about orthodoxy, don't talk about SSPX or the other problems in the church, and will give you some nice smells of the liturgy with like some preaching that's not too horrible. Maybe, hopefully. And yeah, like these people can be just like Latin and incense. And that's the official position from the up here of what FSSB stands for officially on paper. It's like we are going to adhere to Vatican II. This charism. They say the diocese definition of Catholics like this is they are Catholics loyal to Vatican II who adhere to the traditional liturgy, and they want to make it all about liturgy. And this is the thing a trap that we can fall into, because like it's the most obvious thing. When you go into each of our churches, our liturgies can be very different. They want to make it all about liturgy when it's really about these things over here are the doctrines. And so that's why I don't recognize people as trads, because they don't believe in traditional doctrine. And a lot of them tend to dominate the Austin Lat Masses, Fraternity of St. Peter Masses in many cases. I've seen it. You might get some more conservative people who like they're against certain sins against nature and they're socially conservative in some, at least in many cases, not all. And they go to praise and worship sessions with Protestants, but like, yeah, like it's about the Catholic faith. And they often go in large numbers for St. Peter Masses and try to dominate and try to like give these people here, other people here, scruples, and say, oh, see, it's pretty, and they just avoid certain controversial topics sometimes, try to get all these people to go over under these guys. And I found that with modern Catholicism, it's not about doctrine anymore. It's about like so long as everyone's in the church, so long as they go to Mass and show up. It's become an orthopraxy rather than orthodoxy, which is something I'm against. And I think trying to make it like that is dishonest. Because on this side, you get like conservatives. So like John Paul the JP2 would be one. And then you also get people like women priests. and stuff like that. And guess what? All these people can be kind of liturgical trads at the same time. And it's just a different faith. Literally different faith, which is why I don't go for Trinity of St. Peter Masses. I don't want to be enabling. I don't want to be enabling that. I don't want to be enabling the idea that it's just about liturgy. I think that's dishonest, and it's also not why I went to SSPX, started going to Latin Mass in the first place. When I started going, it was because I wanted this, and it was because I started going because Latin Mass went well with these doctrines, and it better reflected these doctrines, and these doctrines were taught by the Catholic Church for 2,000 years. And that's what it's about. Without the faith, you can't be saved. Without the faith, you can't be saved. Period. Full stop. And like these people try to like use legalism, get the people scruples. Like say, oh, there's not been 2 canonical trials, so we can't say these people who believe in women priests and deny Jesus Christ from the dead are heretics. Yeah, I've literally seen people like that. Like the Catholic Church has said no against that for like how long? 2,000 years. Infallibly defined how many times? Yeah, these things have been infallibly defined too. But like, yeah, heresy is heresy, and they're basically trying to like use legalism and trying to misuse canon law to say that heresy is not heresy. That okay, you can't say someone's an unbeliever until they've had a canonical trial twice, and if it's a bishop 3 times, something like that. I'm not that's saying that's little canon law, but like that's basically the logic what they're trying to do. To get these people, and they try to use like canonical terminology and church policy to determine heresy to like try to get people on this side to deny reality, is what I found. And indeed, like because this group is one of the reasons why I think it's confirmed why I have to go SSPX. Because look, a lot of the FSSP priests and laity, if the local dioceses really were interested in having like orthodoxy, pious priests, even if they want to keep the new mass, look, send them to Fraternity of Peter for training to get orthodoxy. Because orthodoxy is a lack of orthodoxy, certainly from a traditional standpoint, is a problem. They have the tools, they're just not using them. Why? Because they don't want to. The point of view for this group is not to like challenge modernism, defeat heresy. It is because you guys you're loyal to us, loyal to our views, and we just want you to be like these people, and just like the Latin Mass smells and bells. And that's the problem. A lot of respect for people who try to stay in the parishes, try to bring back to orthodoxy, but that's not what the local dioceses are using it for. That's not what they're using it for. And that's my problem. That's why I tend to go this route. There's also debate about here among like about the validity of new rite ordinations, new mass. Officially, this group recognizes them. There have been some priests here who've been iffy. Like it's probably case by case more iffy. These people would say definitely don't go because new mass is invalid. New rite of ordination is invalid. Fraternity of Peter, because obviously they get the ordinations from line. So yeah, of course it's valid, approved by the church and everything. It's maybe iffy. They would disagree if it's licit. Licit would be legal, allowed. Valid would be not work. Work versus not work. But that's a whole nother debate. That's the arguments for and against. But yeah, so this is basically the differences between various traditional Catholic groups. I tend to gravitate towards this end of things myself, and I tend to avoid the Fraternity of St. Peter. Know a lot of great people who are trying to strive and be faithful. And there's also debate about whether or not you can go to Eastern Rite Catholic churches because there's not been as many changes. But one thing you should avoid is to think that these people are all little tiny separate groups all the time. SSPX only go to SSPX masses. Fraternity of St. Peter only go to St. Peter masses. Seeds only go to Civiconis masses. I've seen everyone attend each other's masses. Full on. If they can. A lot of traditional Catholics do only go like one type of brand, SSPX only, or Fraternity of St. Peter only diocesan masses, only Civiconis masses. But I have seen people of all brands go to all each other's. It can really vary. Whether or not you think that's a good thing is another matter. But that is in practice what I've seen, and for the record, and clear except for where I have expressed my own opinions clearly, I'm trying to like at least fairly explain the positions of each group. I give semi opinions of why I side with some groups over others, and to what extent. But yeah, anyway, this has been my talk on differences among different traditional Catholic groups. I hope it helps understanding where I'm coming from spiritually. Yeah, I'll see if I can give some Bible verses and and quotes from the Church Fathers and Magisterium of the Church for each of these doctrines here below when I post this. Anyway, God bless, guys.